Welcome to the very first video on Coffee Cults and Cats, G and I's technically third channel, but we're going to call it our second channel. And today we're going to talk about the cancellation of the Buffy revival. And we're going to go over everything that we know about the pilot and also the cancellation, because there's some pictures to go over from the pilot, the alleged original script, not the rewrite, and also the war that is going on in the media through places like Deadline and Variety between Sarah Michelle Gellar and the main team of the show, the revival show, and the Hulu executive who allegedly cancelled the Buffy revival, according to Sarah Michelle Gellar. And that executive, the next working day after he cancelled the revival, he got a massive, massive promotion. So he's now fighting for his life against Sarah Michelle Gellar through putting out his side of the story in publications like Variety. But I don't know. I wouldn't want to go up against Sarah Michelle Gellar in a fight, so it's not going over too well for him. Hi guys, editing Ash and G here. It is very, very early on Saturday, March 21st. I actually filmed this video very late on March 19th, Thursday, into Friday, March 20th. And in between filming and finalizing the video, there was news that broke last night, Friday, March 20th, that Nicholas Brendon, who played Xander Harris for all 7 seasons of Buffy, passed away at the age of 54. And I believe the news broke first through The Hollywood Reporter, and that's who Nikki's friends and family spoke to and released their statement to. So I will leave that article linked down below. Of course, it has been picked up by a bunch of the other trades and republished, but I believe it was The Hollywood Reporter that his friends and family spoke to. So that and all the other sources will be linked down below as usual in the Google link, like I do on my main channel. I will jump in though towards the end of the video because there has been a bit of information that's come out about what the Buffy revival showrunner was going to do in regards to the original Buffy cast members and what their involvement would be if the Buffy revival did end up being greenlit by Hulu and went into production. So I will see you towards the end of the video for that, but for now, back to past me. But to get into absolutely everything, as most people know, Buffy ended in 2003, its original run. It ran for 7 seasons, and anyone who watches my original channel and watched my Buffy deep dive knows that I am a lifelong Buffy fan. I absolutely loved it. It was a huge part of my teenage years and growing up, and I even have a Buffy tattoo to prove it. So the show ended. They did, of course, do the comic seasons for season 8 and 9, and that kind of ran from 2007 to 2017. And in 2018 there actually was an attempt at a Buffy reboot. There was a showrunner and everything. There was a lot of criticism towards this reboot because a lot of people wanted a continuation, a revival with Sarah Michelle Gellar. But Sarah Michelle Gellar, since Buffy ended, had been saying, I'm never coming back. I don't want to revive the character. I don't want to ruin the amazing show that we had, because there has been a lot of criticism towards reboots, revivals, prequels, sequels, continuations, and anyone who has watched my stuff for a while will know I actually got my original star on my original channel, Ash Silver, covering the L Word reboot revival, and that was an absolute mess. I mean, that's why I was able to get a little bit of a star on YouTube, because people wanted to talk about how terrible it was. And there was actually main cast involved with that and as executive producers. And that's why whenever I heard that Sarah Michelle Gellar was the person driving this, she was the person that really was bringing it back, because prior, as I said, she had always said no, no, no. And then when she did the Dexter prequel, which I actually think was really well done, even though she was hardly featured in it, she did a guest appearance on Drew Barrymore's show with Christian Slater. And that's when she first said, you know, doing this show has made me kind of think maybe there is a way of approaching a Buffy revival. And that was really when the flame was kind of lit. And she started being approached, she started putting together this team. And normally, like with the L Word reboot and so many others, I would be seeing like red flags waving when an actor is involved, because a lot of the time they're actors for a reason, not writers, producers, directors. But Sarah Michelle Gellar, she was so involved with the original Buffy show that it was always said that she was kind of a producer, just not on paper and not being paid for it. And she was the biggest, most massive part of making Buffy such a success and being one of the best shows of all time. So she is someone who, in my opinion, her being involved was a massive, massive positive. Not just that she was bringing the character back, but that she's also being involved with producing and stuff like that. So for over the next year or so, there's all this talk about they're trying to put this together and there's maybe going to be something. And then finally, they end up getting a pilot order only from Hulu, and they end up shooting the pilot. The pilot was written by two sisters, the Zuckerman sisters, Lily and Nora, and then it was being directed by Chloe Zhao, who is, of course, an Academy Award, double Academy Award winner, and she also was nominated for another Academy Award. Literally, that was happening 2 days after the cancellation of the revival. And there has been a lot of blame by, in my opinion, Hulu, trying to put the blame on Chloe being too good of a movie director for television, it seems like they're trying to say. But we'll get into that in just a second, because the second that I read that in Deadline, I said to my friend who helps me edit these videos, Evelyn Dar, she's amazing. Her and I ended up having a little like back and forth, and we were talking about it and sending articles and stuff. And when I sent the article to her, I said, that's so weird that they've said that about Chloe. Like, it's so unusual that they would cancel a series like that after a pilot order and put out a story and then kind of dub someone in it that way. So that immediately was a red flag. And then as the day wore on and more stuff started coming out, and Sarah Michelle Gellar then said it was this one executive who didn't like Buffy, hadn't seen the whole show, and liked to remind us that it wasn't for him and he hadn't seen the whole show. She really put the bulk of the blame, or all of the blame, on this executive, and he was allegedly the one really driving the cancellation. And so it made a lot more sense. And it makes even more sense now that you see Sarah Michelle Gellar and a lot of what she's been doing, like speaking out, has been going through different sorts of publications. She even went on the Page Six podcast, and Variety seems to be getting Hulu's side of the story, because there was a story put out just in the last 24 hours from Variety that definitely was trying to put all of the blame on Sarah Michelle Gellar and Chloe and the writers. So in the casting side of things, they ended up casting Ryan Kiera Armstrong as the lead role, which was originally known as Nova in the original pilot script, but they did end up changing the character's name to Rowan in the rewrite. The original pilot script, I will leave what is allegedly the original one in the sources with all of the other articles and all the pictures and things I'm showing you. I'll leave it all linked as usual in the Google link, and I'll put the entire script and stuff in the drive, and you can look through that as you want and read the script and everything. But in this original script, it was 98% this new character of Nova, and then there was just little tiny glimpses at Buffy, who was living in New York and working in just like a corporate insurance job under the pseudonym she'd used before, which is Anne. And she used that name in season 3, episode 1, whenever she left Sunnydale after killing Angel. So the rewrite, a lot of the criticism towards the original pilot was, it skewed a little bit younger and they wanted more Buffy. So the Zuckerman sisters rewrote the pilot and changed a lot of things. And even now, Sarah Michelle Gellar, she went on the Page Six podcast, which Sarah Michelle Gellar doing that is amazing. There's so many things that she's been doing, like talking to people and stuff, that this woman has been extremely successful in Hollywood for over 40 years. And she has not had like any major controversy at all. And her PR is impeccable. She's absolutely beloved. So, as I said, I wouldn't want to pick a fight with her, but watching her like the past, not even week, 6 or 5 days, she has been absolutely expertly putting out her side of the story in such an effective way. And Page Six podcast, all of that, it's just excellent the way that she's done it. Full marks, 10 out of 10. Hulu really screwed themselves too, because Sarah Michelle Gellar is promoting a movie, and so she had a ton of interviews set up, and of course everybody is asking her about the cancellation and what happened. And so she probably would have done additional interviews, and she of course got on her own social media and put out a video. But the fact she had at least some of these interviews set up already just makes it even better. And we'll talk more about Hulu screwing themselves and the specific executive in just a minute. When she was on the Page Six podcast, she was saying, it's a pilot. Like, there's so much working that goes into a pilot before anybody sees it. And she referenced, of course, the original Buffy pilot, which didn't even have Allison Hannigan as Willow. And that's a very, very common thing. Charmed is another one that didn't have Alyssa Milano. There's so many examples. And most pilots, they get redone and changed and everything like that, especially something like this where there's been a pilot order and it's not just, oh, we have this idea and we're going to do a whole season or we're going to do 8 episodes or whatever. So they end up rewriting the pilot. It features a lot more Buffy because really the original script, which again I've left below if you want to read it, the only line that Buffy has is the very, very end of the episode where she's in her office and a woman named Janet comes in and says, Anne, you headed in, don't want to be late for the morning meeting. And Anne turns around, it's Buffy, smiles and says, nope, wouldn't want that. And then this original pilot would end with there's the whole like Sunnydale is being rebuilt, and throughout the episode that's where this new Nova character is. And Buffy's screen, as she walks away, she starts getting like all these insurance claims for new Sunnydale. And the rest of this original pilot is this character Nova has moved there. They have rebuilt new Sunnydale. And the whole thing is like, oh, they have a kind of legend around what happened in the series finale of Buffy where the town collapses. And also throughout the episode, all of those uber vamps and other vampires and everything that fell into the massive crater that was Sunnydale, it's seen that all of them are still not alive, but still going, and they start coming up and they're in like bits of sand and golf courses and stuff, and they start getting out and pulling people down and all of that sort of thing. And we know this was heavily rewrote because we saw pictures of Sarah Michelle Gellar in like a red dress and things. And then we also saw this sort of legend that I was saying around Sunnydale and the Hellmouth and vampires. They have kind of like a carnival-y weekend that is themed around vampires. And so I'll show you on the screen, like they had things set up like haunted houses and rides and stuff that was like a Renaissance fair for vampires. And then we also saw like pictures of Sarah Michelle Gellar behind the scenes doing work and stuff, and just working away on the pilot. They actually shot the pilot last summer in 2025, which is unusual for the traditional format of TV, but of course with streaming now, TV, it's just always continuous, although there is still the traditional pilot season, but it's not as instrumental as it was when the original Buffy aired. And pilot season is actually like right now. So that's, I'm sure, why the cancellation happened now, but still odd that it happened in the way that it did. And especially everything that's happened between them shooting it and now, because yes, they had to edit and everything like that. But from everything that people have said, and even just stuff that had come out from people that had seen the pilot or were working behind the scenes, there was a lot of positivity towards the pilot. I remember even seeing a couple of weeks ago, and you have to take this with a grain of salt, it might not be true. Through Dumois, there was a tip sent in that everybody at Hulu was super excited about the pilot and really buzzed about it. And if they had any sort of indication that maybe Hulu wasn't going to pick it up, you could think maybe that tip was sent in to generate some fans, like getting a buzz up or something. But they really seemed blindsided by this cancellation. So I just can't imagine that wasn't genuine, it unless some strange person just wanted to fake that everybody at Hulu was loving the pilot. But grain of salt, it might not be true. But again, everything else that people have talked about behind the scenes has been positive towards it. And just the fact that it's Sarah Michelle Gellar and everything. Of course, there were some people who were nervous about the revival, the reboot, just because in general they have generally not been good, but there are exceptions like Dexter, like Better Call Saul is a prequel. There are these very, very good revivals, reboots, prequels, sequels, but the whole cancellation seems to have come out of absolutely nowhere. And it does just seem so bizarre the way that they did it, regardless of it coming out of nowhere. Because on Friday, which is the oldest trick in the book, this is like royal family, Hollywood, very, very skeezy thing that they try and do to avoid any sort of attention. It's a massive cliche to put out a story that you don't want people to see, you think is something that's going to be taken negatively. Very popular to put it out on a Friday at like almost 5 o'clock because it's the weekend, people are distracted, people aren't sitting at work like scrolling or whatever. It's just the most cliche to put out something you think you're going to get backlash for at 5 o'clock on a Friday. And even more terrible decision to do so, because not only did Sarah Michelle Gellar have a new movie coming out, she literally was at South by Southwest, apparently about to get on stage for this new movie. And Chloe Zhao, as I mentioned, was up for an Oscar on Sunday. So even just human decency, like, could you not wait till Monday? There was no hard deadline. There was absolutely no reason to deliver this news when they delivered it, with both of these huge things going on at the weekend for the director and the star. Insane behavior. And allegedly, the executive couldn't wait till Monday because they had a massive promotion coming out on Monday. And the executive is allegedly Craig Erwick. And on Monday, Variety reported that he has had a massive promotion and is now going to be in charge of all of 20th Century Fox television and animation. And Craig Erwick, previous to Monday, was in charge of ABC Entertainment and Hulu Originals, and he still is going to lead these with his new role of head of 20th Century Television. And Craig Erwick, they really do just tell on themselves a lot of the time when they try this media manipulation, a lot of these executives. And the information about the promotion and all of these changes at Hulu and Disney and 20th Century, that report came out in Variety. And what followed a few days later was this exclusive to Variety about the Buffy cancellation. And if you read between the lines, I mean, Variety got the exclusive about all of these new jobs at Hulu. There's a lot of favoring certain publications with certain media outlets or even certain talent groups or certain agencies, certain actors, things like that. And all the time, I talk about this a lot on my Coffee and Cults channel, where things that are sources close to or this paparazzi picture, like so much of it is media manipulation and PR. I mean, there's a massive, massive story going on right now with Rebel Wilson of what not to do with PR, where she and her PR are in a massive case about a alleged smear campaign. I'm actually thinking about doing a video on it, but that is just case in point of how much orchestration goes on behind the scenes with these like high level actors, directors, producers, and even massive, massive companies like 20th Century Fox, Disney, Hulu, etc. And so Variety seems to be their favored publication because I've looked back and there's lots of exclusives that they've got. And so this I'm going to read you some of this exclusive article about the Buffy cancellation. And to me, it just seems as though Sarah Michelle Gellar was extremely transparent with fans, posting her video, letting us all know what has happened. It's been cancelled, and she put it out as a video and everything. Like, could not commend her more for being so open. And I also just think that this transparency is so rare today that it's majorly appreciated. So the cancellation happens on Friday. She puts that out on Saturday. It's very late on Thursday that I'm filming this. So they've had 5 days of fans being very angry, people writing lots of stories, videos, articles coming out. And there's a massive backlash because 12 hours after Sarah Michelle Gellar's video, people very easily figured out who the executive was. And again, Sarah Michelle Gellar knows what she's doing. She knows what breadcrumbs she's leaving. And so that executive has been getting a lot of backlash. He gets promoted, or the news comes out that he's been promoted on Monday. And so it just feeds in even more backlash. And now this article yesterday came out through Variety where they are trying to blame Sarah Michelle Gellar and Chloe. And there's also looks like there's some kind of trying to pit them against each other too, which I don't think that's going to work. I don't think blaming them is going to work either, because even if just the word "it's been cancelled" came out, people are going to blame Hulu, of course. Because they're the ones making terrible decisions. And it seems as though maybe Ryan Murphy needed a 128th show, which don't get me started on Ryan Murphy. And shows like The Beauty, horrendous with my enemy Ashton Kutcher in it, and yet the Buffy revival's cancelled. Give me a break. So the article starts, and they really must have thought that they were doing something with this, because they thought that this would get fans' backs up, but they have to realize that Buffy fans are, one, extremely loyal and love their show, and they also love Sarah Michelle Gellar. So good luck trying to turn them against her after 20 years. And the start of the article goes, the show is called Buffy the Vampire Slayer New Sunnydale, but Buffy Ann Summers is barely in it. Rather than revolving around Sarah Michelle Gellar's Buffy, the shooting draft for the show's pilot episode, written by sisters Nora and Lila Zuckerman and obtained by Variety, introduces an entirely new set of characters and, crucially, a new Slayer, a 16-year-old high schooler named Nova. In the Zuckerman's original draft of the pilot, Buffy only appears at the end in a tag. Now, as I said already, this was the original pilot. I mean, you can even tell because the character's original name of Nova is in it. They went through massive rewrites. And so them putting out this article trying to be like, why you all care so much? Sarah Michelle Gellar's barely in it. One, it's a pilot. And if they were going to have 8, 10, 12, 20 episodes, I doubt they would do that. But regardless, you don't know. She could be in every second of the other episodes, and I'm sure she'd be in a lot more than the end scene and saying one line. Okay, maybe it's balanced out, but that's why it's not a complete remake. It's a revival. It's a continuation. And so them putting this out, trying to either say in sort of reading between the lines in the rest of the article, it seems like they're trying to say, oh, this was just a cash grab, like Sarah Michelle Gellar's only in like 2 seconds. Then they also try and blame Chloe and say that, oh, she's a movie director and she didn't know the intricacies and the nuances of television and like very heavy dialogue stuff. One, like she's a very talented director, again, Academy Award winning director, and she also is a lifelong Buffy fan too. I constantly used to say with all these other shows and reboots and revivals, I mean, you do want someone who knows the source material so well. And I just have a hard time believing anything that these executives say because, again, look at the quality that they're choosing. I mean, maybe they should look at it as a compliment that they canceled it because look at what they're putting on. Again, to reference The Beauty by Ryan Murphy and My Enemy Ashton Kutcher. And Ashton Kutcher is an executive producer on that. But the fact that they are trying to blame Chloe and Sarah Michelle Gellar for their own decision is just so bizarre and also stupid because Buffy fans aren't going to turn against Sarah Michelle Gellar. Like, let me tell you that, unless she did something absolutely insane, which who knows what can happen. You never know with these celebrities, but I doubt it. After the woman's had a successful career in Hollywood for 40 years, that is pretty unblemished. And she also has a successful Hollywood marriage, which is very hard to achieve too. So the bottom line is I think that this war in the media is going to go back and forth for a while. I haven't putting too much stock. It is interesting to read the original draft of the pilot, but they did massive rewrites, and Sarah Michelle Gellar herself has said, you know, there's so much change that happens. Even if you read, honestly, the rewritten pilot and then watched the actual pilot if it aired, there would be not like insane differences, but there would be a lot of differences. And so comparing the first draft to what the final product would be, miles apart. Again, even as I said, the character name is different. So I think that this will go on back and forth. There probably will be some more leaking of information, especially from Hulu's side, because they know that they fucked up. So that's my kind of prediction. I don't imagine that unless they get very desperate, that they would leak the actual pilot. And Hulu have said that they're wanting to do something with the Buffy property, but I just don't imagine that Sarah Michelle Gellar goes back after this and being treated this way. So Hulu have absolutely fucked up our one chance at having a Buffy revival. And I know a lot of people have been saying like, oh, we'll move it to Netflix or something, but there's the whole rights situation and Disney, Hulu, like the 20th Century Fox, like they own the rights. And there is a lot of not confusion, but there's an interesting situation that's always happened with the Buffy rights because of the original movie. And there was a deal in that, like if you're a Buffy fan, there's two executive producers that were a married couple, the Koozies. They would come up as executive producers for every single episode of Buffy, but they never set foot on set because they directed and produced the original Buffy movie. So that was all tied into the Buffy rights and the Buffy property. And so forever, they're executive producers and credited and paid for this deal that they had in 1992 with the original movie. So there is obviously Joss Whedon too is another whole bag of things. Hi guys, editing Ash and G here with that little bit of promised information about the original cast and what their hopeful involvement would have been if the show was greenlit. And this information came from Felicia Day, who played Violet, one of the potential later turned Slayers in season 7 of the show. She was a recurring cast member and was in quite a few episodes in season 7. And she was also in The Guild and a bunch of other stuff. And she still does a lot of conventions and stuff too with her Buffy character and other roles that she's had. And she was at a party with the new Buffy showrunner, and they ended up having a conversation about, you know, plans and stuff. And the Buffy showrunner said to her, apparently, that there was plans to bring back as many original characters as they could, and invitation was extended to her, and Felicia Day said, oh my god, yes, like I was totally in. And I do think that this sounds legitimate. I mean, I can't imagine that they wouldn't at least try and bring back a lot of the main cast members, because a lot of them seem to be enthusiastic about the revival. And I know people like David Boreanaz and Sarah Michelle Gellar still have like really good relationship. And any interviews I saw, a lot of them were saying, "Oh yeah, I'd totally be up for appearing," but most of them didn't seem to know what was happening. And of course, it was only the pilot, so we know why, that they hadn't been maybe spoken to because the show hadn't actually been greenlit. I do think it might get a little bit complicated with David Boreanaz and James Marsters, because they're playing vampires that don't age and they are humans that do age, but I'm sure they could have figured something out. Obviously, there's all like de-aging special effects and stuff, but it just depends how much of a budget, because it is still really expensive to do that. So maybe for like a one-off episode, obviously we're all talking dream scenario now. I do think there is a bit of potential to move it somewhere else, but the problem is in all the legal tanglement because of the Buffy rights and how complicated it is, not just the whole situation with the executive producers mentioned earlier, and just how Hulu has it and Disney has it and 20th Century Fox, and they have the original show. And I do think that there is some potential to maybe go somewhere else with the project. As I said, I can't imagine that Sarah Michelle Gellar would go back to Hulu now, and especially because the executive, as I was saying, he's now in charge of all of television, and it seems like they are having this back and forth in the media. So maybe a massive amount of fan outcry, somebody else could try and pick it up, somebody like Netflix or Apple that have so much money. But the problem is in the rights and like the legality, and it would take some work to untangle all of that. But I do think if there's anyone on earth who can get the Buffy rights and the whole legal circus out of the clutches of 20th Century Fox, Disney, Hulu, it is Buffy fans and Sarah Michelle Gellar, because Buffy fans, they're just so attached to this property. They are so loyal. They are so passionate about the show. And I do just think it's one of the most beloved properties ever. And it's not just that it's like a show that people like really enjoyed watching. Like,
Buffy the Vampire Slayer is in. We just love the new show. We are so thrilled that it's on the WB.
You.
And you do have a name, Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Or Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
From now on, here on in, you will be known for the rest of your life. It's just,
Buffy.
oh, that's Buffy. That's Buffy.
I thought I was going to be Kendall for the rest of my life. I kept saying I'd be 40 years old and I would be Kendall for the rest of my life, but I think it's going to be the Buffster now.
It had, like, phenomenal ratings, the highest ratings.
The highest ratings WB has ever had for a Monday night. We beat UPN.
like, it meant so much to people. It's been such a huge part of people's life for a long time, and there's new younger audiences discovering it, which is amazing too. So I do think there's potential, possibly, but I will be keeping an eye out, and if there's any major updates or anything, I'll put them in the pinned comment. And if there's major updates, then I will do an update on this channel most likely, unless it's something insane, and I'll put it on my main channel. But thank you so much as always for putting up with an editing section, and back to past me. So lots of moving parts. I do think there will be more from Hulu, and it will definitely be interesting to see what happens, because if you're Sarah Michelle Gellar too, like, you got nothing to lose by saying your piece, and you know, like, your fans are behind you and stuff too. So I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on this. Getting G in shot for our outro here, but if you're a massive Buffy fan, I do have a deep dive on my original channel, and it goes into all of the behind the scenes, so many stories. And if you're a huge fan, you will know obviously some of the behind the scenes, but there's stories and people I spoke to that dated Buffy cast members and things, and stories that I know were, what are you doing? Were were told for the first time in my Buffy deep dive video. So I'll leave that link down below too. I've left my original channel, social media, G social media, Patreon, all of that good stuff, the sources down below in the description box and the pinned comment. And thank you so much for watching the first Coffee, Cults, and Cats video, and hope to see you for some more shorter trending pop culture stories in the next one. Bye guys.